I used to think betrayal came with shouting, maybe broken dishes, a slammed door, something dramatic enough to mark the end. Turns out, mine came through a single text message. It was 11:42 p.m. on a Thursday. I was alone in the kitchen of our Fairfield Ridge condo, sipping black coffee, unable to sleep. Selena was supposed to be in Sedona on a wellness retreat with her alignment tribe. Yoga, smoothies, crystals, all the usual. I didn't ask questions. I learned not to. The screen lit up, and there it was. I've met someone new. Your things are in storage. I've moved on. Please don't contact me. Underneath was a screenshot of a bank transfer, $118,000 gone from our joint savings to her personal account. No argument. No phone call. Just that. I stared at it for a while. Not because I didn't believe it, but because I did. The precision of it, the detachment, that was Selena. Clean exit. No mess. Just numbers and closure. I set the phone down. Took another sip. It tasted bitter now. 15 years of marriage, gone in 2 sentences into wire transfer. Some people might have screamed or called her back. I didn't. That's not how I'm built. I'm a forensic financial consultant. My job is to find inconsistencies, spot what others miss, and keep my emotions out of it. You don't get to be good at that by reacting. And I'd seen this coming. The signs were all there. Weekend trips that got longer. New designer clothes I never saw her wear. Late-night phone calls that ended the second I walked into the room. She thought she was being clever, but I notice everything. It's literally what I do for a living. Still, I didn't confront her. Not once. Because while she was plotting her escape, I was preparing mine. I opened a secure email account she didn't know existed, one of many safeguards I'd created over the years. 3 alerts waited for me. Attempts to access financial accounts not even tied to her name. She was trying to clean me out, not just walk away. That's when I sent her 2 words in return. Good luck. Then I called my brother Reese. He picked up after 2 rings. You all right? She made her move, I said flatly. Silence. Then, it's time. It's time. We didn't need to say more. Reese knew what that meant. 5 years ago, over drinks at a cabin upstate, I'd laid it all out for him, what I'd do if Selena ever crossed the line. He helped me build the firewall. Financially, digitally, emotionally. I looked around the condo at ours, though now it felt more like a showroom she curated for Instagram. Designer furniture, abstract art, white walls, and not a single photo of us. Except one, our wedding portrait hanging by the kitchen. We looked happy in that picture. But even then, I remember thinking her smile was just a little too posed. I met Selena at a university fundraiser. She was stunning, witty, confident, magnetic. She told me right away she wasn't interested in numbers. That's your world, she said. I just want to live well. I should have listened more closely to that. But I was in my late 30s, fresh out of a short-lived first marriage, and here was this vibrant woman who seemed to light up every room. She had big dreams, launching a boutique wellness studio. I had the funds. We made it work. She got a line, her studio. I got to believe I was building a life with someone who saw me. I was wrong. When she wanted a new space, I paid for it. When she asked for a vacation home we never used, I signed the check. When she forgot my birthday last year and bought me a luxury watch the next day, I said thank you and wore it. But I also stayed up that night drafting the final version of my contingency plan. Over the years, I protected myself quietly. I created 2 LLCs under different holding structures. I moved funds into trusts she didn't know existed. Diversified into crypto. Set up international accounts for clients with my name discreetly attached. Nothing illegal. Just invisible. To her, we had a savings account, a retirement plan, and a shared checking account. That was all she saw. That was all she needed to see. I didn't do it to deceive her. I did it because I knew who I was married to. And sooner or later, she'd show me why I needed that protection. She finally did. I packed a bag, locked up the condo, and drove through the snow toward Reese's place. Not because I needed a place to stay, I have options, but because I needed to be around someone who didn't lie to my face for years. As I drove, I felt something I didn't expect. Not rage. Not heartbreak. Just peace. Because for the first time in 15 years, I wasn't walking on eggshells. I wasn't playing the role of the quiet provider or the boring husband she tolerated for status. I was just a man who saw the game and decided not to lose. Selena thought she played her hand perfectly. But what she didn't know was, I stacked the deck. Dearest listeners, before we proceed, I've collected 10 exclusive anonymous confessions from men who were humiliated, betrayed, and disrespected by their wives, only to come back with the most cold-blooded revenge moves you've ever heard. Grab access through the link in the description or up here. People assume I'm a boring guy. I get it. When you tell people you're a forensic financial consultant, their eyes glaze over like you just recited tax code. They don't realize my job is less about math and more about reading people. Money never lies, but people always do. My job is to watch what they try to hide and notice what they think no one else can see. Selena always thought I was just good with spreadsheets. She used to joke about it at dinner parties. Graham could make a pie chart about our groceries. Everyone would laugh, and I'd smile along. I never minded being underestimated. It's a dangerous thing when someone thinks you're predictable, and that's what gave me the edge. I didn't create the contingency plan out of paranoia. I created it because I could see the writing on the wall long before the final text arrived. I just didn't want to admit it. Love makes you foolish in quiet, subtle ways. We weren't always broken. I remember the first few years clearly. Selena had dreams, and I had the means to build them. She wanted a wellness studio. I helped her lease a space in downtown Burlington. She wanted a brand, a line, so I hired a graphic designer and helped her form an LLC. She was passionate, vibrant. She made strangers feel like they mattered. I respected that about her. But the more successful she became, the less she needed me. Not in the business sense. I still paid the bills. But emotionally, spiritually, she began to drift. It started small. Phone turned face down at dinner. Solo trips, foreign networking. Conversations that somehow always circled back to her needs, her growth, her vision. Eventually, I became less of a partner and more of a silent investor in a lifestyle I didn't belong to. Still, I didn't fight her on it. That was never my way. I just observed, documented, prepared. The contingency plan started about 6 years into our marriage. It wasn't a grand moment. Just a comment she made in passing. We were at her friend's rooftop birthday party, and someone asked how she felt about being married to a finance guy. She smiled and said, "Well, as long as the money keeps flowing, I guess I don't really need to know what he does." They laughed. I didn't. That night, after she fell asleep next to me in a sea of decorative pillows she'd insisted on buying, I opened my laptop and started drawing lines. The first move was restructuring my income. Instead of routing everything through one taxable business, I split consulting projects between 2 shell LLCs, Blue Harbor Advisory and Nordwick Management, both registered in different states, both with separate EINs. On paper, they were small firms. In reality, they funneled over 80% of my income into asset protection vehicles. Next came the trusts. I used my mother's maiden name as the founding title for a discretionary trust based out of Delaware. I moved my retirement accounts there, along with long-term investments. The ownership trail ended with a third-party legal trustee, making it nearly impossible for someone like Selena to trace. After that, I diversified. Real estate, crypto, international holdings. Not flashy, not illegal, just shielded. I kept our shared accounts looking comfortable but modest. Just enough for her to feel like things were okay. She never questioned it, never even checked. She was so focused on appearances, on the image of success, that she forgot to question the structure behind it. I remember once she looked at me and said, "Graham, if something ever happened to you, I'd have no idea where to start. I don't even know what we own." She laughed. I didn't. There's a saying in my field. Those who build the books always know where the fire exits are. By the time Selena began stepping out, emotionally, financially, maybe even physically, I already had every exit mapped. The night she transferred $118,000 and sent that text, I wasn't financially ruined. I was annoyed, because the only money she could touch was the money I left in plain sight. It wasn't a trap. I'm not a villain, but it was a test. And she failed. After Reese and I hung up that night, I logged into my primary system, a secure interface I'd written myself over years. Layers of encryption, offsite backups, notifications only I could receive. Everything was intact. My crypto wallets? Untouched. My offshore business contracts? Clean. The trusts? Still quietly compounding. The only thing she managed to take was the decoy. I remember leaning back in Reese's guest room the next morning, sipping fresh coffee and staring out at his backyard woods. I should have felt heartbroken. I should have felt betrayed. But all I felt was this quiet click inside me, like a vault door finally closing. It wasn't just the money. It was the realization that for 15 years, she had never once asked me who I was beneath the numbers. She married the surface, the safety, the illusion, not the man. And the irony? I would have given her everything, gladly, if she'd just valued what I gave. But she didn't. She assumed it was hers by default. That's the difference between entitlement and partnership. A partner contributes. An opportunist consumes. And once I stopped feeding the illusion, she moved on to her next source, Ryder Cross. The fitness influencer with a motivational quote for every betrayal and an ego as inflated as his protein shake brand. I'd seen him in her tagged photos for months. I wasn't blind, just patient. And now, as Selena packed my belongings into a storage unit and celebrated her freedom with Ryder, I reviewed the logs from the accounts she tried to access. 17 failed attempts in less than 24 hours, 3 flagged IP addresses, and 1 auto-forwarded notification to my lawyer, marked unauthorized access attempt from known associate. Selena didn't know it yet, but she had just handed me every piece of leverage I needed. She didn't just try to steal from me. She committed fraud. And in a divorce court, that changes everything. The morning after the text, I woke up before the sun, out of habit. Even after what happened, my body still obeyed the rhythm I'd built over decades. Coffee at 6. First review of financial alerts by 6:30. Most people wake up to alarms. I wake up to market shifts and security triggers. But that morning felt different. Not because I was heartbroken. Not even because I was angry. I felt surgically focused. Like something inside me had finally aligned. For years, I'd walked on eggshells trying to keep peace in a home where I was treated like a walking ledger. Now, there was nothing left to hold on to. I packed up my laptop, loaded my encrypted drive, and left Reese's guest room as quietly as I'd entered. Before pulling out of his driveway, I checked my phone. No new messages from Selena. Just her final one from the night before, still sitting there like a signature on a contract she didn't read. Your things are in storage. Right. Storage. I clicked open the message thread, scanned the address she'd sent, and typed it into my GPS 22 minutes away, in a nondescript industrial strip on the edge of town. I knew the area. Auto shops, drop shipping warehouses, a couple of shady third-party logistics outfits. Of course she didn't pick a luxury service. She didn't want this to be sentimental. Just transactional. Efficient. The drive was quiet. No radio. No distractions. Just the hum of my truck and a mind already 2 steps ahead. When I arrived, the facility looked exactly as I expected. Cheap gray siding, dented rolling gates, and an underpaid college kid yawning behind a reception desk. I gave him the access code Selena had included in her text. He tapped it into the system. Unit 312. He mumbled, handing me a temporary key card. I walked through the maze of concrete corridors, counting doors as I went. It was early, and I was alone. The hallway smelled like dust, cardboard, and stale rubber, same as any other place where people put away the pieces of lives they don't want to look at anymore. When I reached Unit 312, I slid the key card and pulled the metal latch. Inside were 2 medium-sized moving boxes. That was it. No furniture. No bookshelves. No files. No photos. Just 2 taped-up boxes sitting in the middle of a cold concrete room like they'd been dropped there as an afterthought. I crouched down and opened the first one. Dress shirts. Slacks. My gym shoes, still in the shoebox. A belt I hadn't worn in months. The second box held my old laptop, a few hardback books, and a shaving kit. No photo frames. No watch from my father. No cufflinks. No letters. Nothing with real memory. Nothing with weight. She hadn't packed my life. She'd packed what was convenient. What didn't make her feel guilty? I stood there for a moment, the cold seeping through the soles of my boots. That's when something hardened inside me. Not rage. Something cleaner. Sharper. This wasn't about a marriage anymore. It was about erasure. You don't just walk away from a man. You don't pack his life into 2 boxes and pretend it never existed. I carried the boxes to the truck, set them gently in the back seat, and climbed in. Before starting the engine, I opened my laptop and connected to my secured hotspot. The screen lit up, and I was in. In my dashboard. In my world. My fortress. I accessed my financial surveillance tools, most of them proprietary, built over years. I ran a trace on Selena's name, starting with bank activity, then filtering by known vendors and affiliates. I didn't just want to know where she was spending. I wanted to know who she was spending with. And there he was, Ryder Cross. He showed up in multiple transactions over the last 3 months. Gym equipment orders, lease deposits, a new vehicle, an electric SUV, flashy and overpriced. Selena was listed as a co-signer. Of course she was. I'd seen him in her social media posts. Shirtless. Always smiling like he just cracked the code to life. He ran some kind of fitness empire, which was influencer speak for overpriced merch and motivational videos that say nothing. But people like Selena ate it up. It wasn't about substance. It was about shine. I dug deeper. Ryder's business was called Crosscore Athletics, registered as an LLC about 2 years ago. On paper, he was doing well. In reality, he was barely afloat. 3 business credit cards maxed, a commercial lease with late payment notices, and a new expansion loan that had been approved just 2 months ago, co-signed by Selena. That loan was backed, in part, by our joint marital assets, which meant she just made me financially liable for a business I had never seen, in a field I had nothing to do with, run by a man I wouldn't trust with a debit card. She didn't just leave me. She tried to hand me the bill. I snapped the laptop shut, fingers tighter than I expected, breathed out slowly. This wasn't a surprise, but the confirmation still stung. She didn't fall in love. She invested in a future she thought would replace me. But now that future had a leak in the hull, and she didn't even know the water was rising. I drove to a coffee shop I liked near the downtown square. Small, tucked in, quiet. The kind of place that still called regulars by name and served espresso in proper cups instead of plastic lids. I ordered a double shot, no milk, and found a window seat. Pulled out the laptop again. This time, I wrote up a briefing for Harper, my attorney. Labeled it Preliminary Financial Risk Document, Selena Ryder and Crosscore Exposure. Attached spreadsheets. Loan documents. Access logs from the accounts she attempted to breach. A full timeline of her financial movements. It was clean, ironclad, prosecutable if necessary. But I wasn't after jail time. I was after leverage. Control. I sent it all to Harper with a short note. Activate emergency protections. Begin the filing. Let's move fast. Then I checked my phone. 7 missed calls. All from Selena. 1 text. What did you do? The money's locked. My cards aren't working. You can't do this. I didn't reply. I didn't need to. By the time she realized the accounts were frozen, the fraud alerts flagged, and the credit lines suspended, it was already too late. She made her move. Now it was my turn. I've dealt with financial criminals, corporate manipulators, even people laundering money through charities that served cancer patients. But somehow, the guy who irked me the most wore gym tanks with his name on them and quoted Nietzsche on Instagram stories. Ryder Cross. The man Selena chose to implode our marriage over. I wasn't jealous. That's not how I'm wired. But there's a certain insult in being replaced by someone whose entire identity revolves around dumbbells and hashtags like #BeUnstoppable. Selena thought she was upgrading. Truth was, she walked from a quiet fortress into a burning house. And she didn't bring water, she brought gasoline. I sat in my truck that evening and reviewed everything. Ryder's public profile was glossy. Videos of him doing pull-ups, posing with smoothie brands, speaking at fake empowerment summits. His gym, Crosscore Athletics, looked polished in photos, graffiti-style branding, LED lighting, glass doors, a protein bar at the front. But behind the curtain, it was bleeding cash. I ran his LLC through 3 databases, business credit tracking, equipment leasing records, and a private platform only a handful of forensic consultants use. What I found painted a much uglier picture. 3 business credit cards, $47,000, $23,000, and $16,500, all maxed. A lease agreement for his gym space that had been renegotiated twice due to delinquent payments. A car loan he couldn't qualify for on his own, Selena co-signed. But the final piece? That made me stop mid-keystroke. For months ago, Ryder had applied for a small business equipment loan through a regional lender. $175,000. Collateralized using his gym equipment, treadmills, weight racks, lighting systems. Selena had signed as the co-borrower. Only, the loan paperwork listed her as married, and it included my income profile. My signature wasn't on it. Not legally. But the documents made it appear like I was backing it all. That gave the bank better rates, better terms, faster approval. She didn't just walk away from our marriage. She used it as a battering ram to force open a new financial door. That changed things. Selena hadn't just hurt me emotionally. She committed fraud, used my assets, without consent, to secure someone else's future, one that now relied on collapsing scaffolding. I reached out to Reese again, because there was only one person I trusted to confirm what I'd found. We'd done this before, cleaning up after corporate messes. But this wasn't some offshore scam. This was personal. Need you to dig, I told him. On Ryder? Yes. Everything. Business, personal, financial. I want every crack. He didn't even ask why. Within 3 hours, I had a full report. Turns out, Ryder had been rejected for 3 prior expansion loans before Selena entered the picture. His social media numbers were inflated with fake engagement bots. He owed back payments on fitness equipment from a previous gym he'd relaunched. And this was the cherry on top. He'd filed for bankruptcy once before, under a different LLC name, Iron Temple Concepts. Same logo, same branding, different name. He just rebranded failure and tried again. And Selena walked right into it. She didn't do it out of love. She did it out of ambition. She saw a man with muscles and followers and thought she could ride that wave. Except the wave was fake, and she tied me to the surfboard. She probably thought I'd roll over. Sign the divorce papers. Split the savings. Let her run off into the sunset with Ryder and her yoga mat. What she didn't know is I'd spent my life building real foundations. I wasn't about to let her burn mine down to build a fantasy. I drafted another email to Harper. Subject: Loan fraud and equipment cosign. Action required. Confirmed that Selena Ryder co-signed on business equipment and leases using marital status and my income profile to secure better loan terms. Signature appears forged or obtained under false pretense. Please initiate emergency asset protection protocol. Prepare filing under financial infidelity and loan fraud. She responded within minutes. Understood. We'll lock everything down. And yes, we can press charges if it comes to that. I didn't want to press charges, not yet. Not unless Selena or Ryder tried to fight dirty. But they'd already handed me every legal weapon I needed. I spent the next few hours downloading every digital receipt, bank trace, IP log, and cosign document I could find. If they came for anything, I'd meet them with paper walls and steel enforcement. No one walks into my house and rewires the power without a fuse blowing. And I had all the fuses. That night, back in the small rental house I was using temporarily, I poured a glass of bourbon and sat with the lights off, screen glowing blue in front of me. The more I read about Ryder, the more I realized he wasn't even a villain. He was a prop. A useful face for Selena to attach to her new storyline. The liberated, glowing woman who found love in a juice bar and walked away from the boring finance guy. Let her have that fantasy. Because tomorrow, I was going to walk into that gym and introduce Ryder to something he'd never seen before. Real consequences. I knew Selena would show up eventually. She thrives on control, not the loud, chaotic kind, but the polished, smiling kind. She doesn't scream. She smiles through her teeth and says things like, "Let's be adults about this," while trying to rearrange your life to fit her next phase. So when my receptionist buzzed my office and said, "There's a woman here. She says she's your wife and insists on seeing you," I didn't flinch. I'd been expecting her. I straightened my cuffs, saved my case notes, and stood. My office sits on the top floor of a low-rise building in Montview. Nothing extravagant, but quiet, professional, and entirely mine. Every piece of furniture, every document, every inch of code in my client's systems came from years of discipline. Unlike Selena's world of hashtags and borrowed aesthetics, mine was built to last. I walked down the hall, and there she was. Selena, wearing a peach-toned athleisure set, hair in a glossy bun, and designer sunglasses perched on her head like a crown. She looked like she came straight from a brand deal. But her eyes were scanning, desperate. "Graham," she said brightly, voice echoing just a little too loud for comfort. "I'm so glad you're here. We need to talk." Everyone in the waiting room turned. I offered her a tight smile and motioned toward the conference room. She followed quickly, still talking. "There's been a huge mix-up at the bank. Something about flagged transfers and frozen cards. It's all a misunderstanding, obviously." I closed the glass door behind us and turned. "It's not a misunderstanding," I said calmly. "You moved money without authorization. The bank flagged it as potential fraud. They acted accordingly." Her face twitched. "It was a joint account, Graham. I had every right." "You also declared, via text, that you were leaving the marriage," I replied. which legally changes everything. Her tone shifted. I moved my share. That's all. No, I said. You didn't move your share. You emptied it. You also attempted access to accounts you didn't know existed, multiple times, from different IP addresses. Then you co-signed a business loan using my financial profile without consent. Her smile finally cracked. You're investigating me? Not investigating. Protecting myself. You set this in motion, Selena. I'm just making sure you don't walk away with what isn't yours. You can't do this, she said, voice hardening. I've made deposits. Commitments. I just signed a new lease with Ryder. Yes, I cut in. I know all about the lease. The SUV. The $175,000 gym equipment loan. The gym's debt load. The credit cards. The false marital asset declaration. I know everything. She took a half step back. You went through my accounts? No, I said evenly. I went through mine. She crossed her arms, dropped her voice to a sharp whisper. This is vindictive. I'm your wife. I tilted my head. No, you're not. You're the person who texted me from another state that you'd met someone better, moved my belongings into storage, and drained our shared savings. That's not a wife. That's a hostile exit. Silence. She blinked fast, looked at the glass walls around us, realized everyone could see her, but not here. Still, she was exposed. And she hated that. I'll fight this, she said finally. I have a lawyer. I deserve half. I exhaled slowly, not even needing to raise my voice. You'll get access to half of what you were entitled to based on the accounts you knew about. You might want to ask your lawyer what that actually means during discovery. She narrowed her eyes. What does that mean? It means, I said, you're assuming our joint account was everything. It wasn't. She blinked. There's more. I leaned forward just slightly. There's everything else you never asked about. The assets you didn't know I was protecting. The income you never tracked. The accounts I never merged. Her voice dropped. You're hiding money? No, I said with finality. I protected it. There's a difference. One is illegal. The other is just smart. She stared at me. For the first time, I saw panic breaking through the polished facade. You always let things slide, she said, quieter now. You never fought. Never pushed back. That was my mistake, I replied. This is me correcting it. The receptionist buzzed gently. Mr. Lorne, your 11:30 is here. I opened the door, holding it politely. If you need anything else, please have your attorney contact mine. She didn't move at first. Then, finally, she walked past me, her sneakers squeaking on the tile. Before she left, she turned back and said, You've changed. I looked her straight in the eye. No, Selena. I've just finally stopped pretending. She stood there for a second longer. No more smiles, no more spin. Just silence. Then she left. I walked back to my desk, closed the door, and sat in my chair. The moment I had been preparing for was no longer theoretical. It had begun. And I was more than ready. After Selena left my office, I didn't celebrate. I didn't fist pump or crack a smile or pour a drink. I just sat at my desk, rolled up my sleeves, and opened my laptop. Because it was time to treat this for what it was, a case. Not of heartbreak, but of fraud. The first thing I did was message Harper, my attorney. I asked her to initiate an asset protection protocol, a legal freeze on all shared accounts, properties, and investment vehicles tied to both our names. She confirmed receipt instantly. She'd been on standby ever since I sent her the first document dump. Then came the second phase. I'd been careful with our finances for years, quietly distancing my real assets while keeping enough in our joint accounts to give Selena a sense of control. But now, I needed to know just how deep the rot went. So I ran a full forensic trace. Not just through bank statements, but through vendor payments, PayPal transfers, Stripe accounts, even digital wallet connections tied to her name. What I found wasn't surprising, but it still hit like a steel rod to the chest. Selena had been draining our funds in increments for over a year. Small transfers at first. $600 here. $1,200 there. Always during a trip or retreat. Always disguised as studio expenses. Then it grew. For $1,800 to a wellness business in Florida. $7,200 to brand consulting. $13,000 as a personal investment into cross-core athletics, listed under a vague LLC called Selena Ryder Ventures. But the most damning pattern? A cluster of transfers, large ones made in the 2 months before her final text. These weren't just expenses. They were exits. She was building her runway. Not to fly. To flee. Altogether? She'd siphoned nearly $80,000 out of our joint account before the $118,000 wire that triggered the fraud alert. Harper's response to my findings was short, professional, and sharp. This qualifies as financial infidelity. We can file under misappropriation and breach of fiduciary responsibility between spouses. She may also face criminal exposure depending on state thresholds. I reread her message 3 times. Selena hadn't just left me. She'd engineered her escape, funded her boyfriend's failing business, positioned herself as an investor, branded herself as self-made, using money I earned while she was telling the world she was finding her power. I should have felt furious, but I didn't. What I felt was clean, like someone had sliced through years of static and finally tuned me back to myself. That night, I sat in the corner of my rented house, the one with creaky floors and no art on the walls. Just me and the laptop screen. I drafted a final report and sent it to Harper. Labeled it Stage 2, Irregular Transfers, Hidden Accounts, Business Cosigns. Then I turned my phone over and noticed a new text. Unknown number. You need to back off. Selena deserves better than you. Don't make this uglier than it needs to be. It was Ryder. That smug, protein-chugging, lease-leveraging wreck of a businessman had decided to step in. I didn't respond. I just screenshotted it, archived the number, added it to the folder. And then, because I wanted clarity, I pulled up one of the surveillance programs I built myself, something I usually reserved for corporate cases. It let me cross-reference social activity, phone metadata, and transaction history. I clicked Run. A new layer of data populated on-screen. Timestamps, payments, locations. Selena and Ryder had been linked longer than I thought. Their first joint expense went back 11 months, a trip to Denver for a wellness expo. Hotel, meals, spa package, paid for on our joint card. That was before they went public online. She'd been cheating financially long before she cheated emotionally. And Ryder? He wasn't just a gym guy. He was a parasite who'd wrapped himself around my wife's insecurities and turned them into capital. But here's the part that made me pause. One of the documents Ryder submitted for his business loan, co-signed by Selena, contained a signature block labeled Spousal Verification of Income. Under that, my name, my forged signature. I stared at it for a full minute. She didn't just lie. She didn't just leave. She faked my consent. Used my name to back a business I had no stake in. Which meant when the loans came due, and they would, I'd be liable. Unless I stopped her now. I picked up the phone and called Reese. Got a minute? I asked. He didn't hesitate. What do you need? Everything you can find on cross-core athletics. Legally. Public records. Leases. Loan docs. Equipment contracts. I want to see the web. Got it, he said. Want me to call in anyone else? No. Just you. The fewer eyes on this, the better. He paused. You okay? I'm fine, I said. And I was. I just want this airtight. By morning, he had what I needed. 3 separate lease agreements. Ryder's personal credit score terrible. A default on a prior gym location. And worse? The equipment Ryder used as collateral for the latest loan? Leased. He didn't even own the machines he staked $175,000 on. The loan contract said equipment ownership, but the serial numbers matched a third-party lease from a supplier in Michigan, which meant the loan was fraudulent. If the bank found out, they'd recall the loan immediately. If Selena was still listed as co-signer, they'd come for her assets. And because she used our marital records to qualify, they'd try to come for mine. Except they couldn't, because I'd already burned the bridge. The next morning, Harper and I met at her office. I handed her everything: the fake spousal consent, the hidden transfers, Ryder's financials, the forged documents. I want to file for emergency asset protection today, I told her. She didn't blink. We'll file within the hour. And with this much on record, I'd say we have enough to lock everything down until the divorce is finalized. If they even try to contest, we can counter with intent to pursue criminal charges. I nodded. And the loan? Let the bank figure that out. They're going to discover the fraud eventually. You just make sure they don't have your name anywhere near the fallout. I left her office with one emotion I hadn't felt in months: control. Not revenge. Not victory. Just clean, calm control. The kind that only comes from knowing you didn't lose something. You escaped it. There's a difference between reading someone on paper and facing them in person. Paper doesn't smirk. Paper doesn't lift weights to hide insecurity. Paper doesn't take your life, carve out the pieces, and hand them to someone else like a trophy. But Ryder Cross did. So I decided it was time to pay him a visit. I didn't text. Didn't call. I didn't announce anything. I just showed up. Crosscore Athletics was every bit the illusion I expected. Polished windows. Sleek black and red branding. A neon sign flickering above the entrance that said "Built Not Bought." The irony didn't miss me. Inside, it smelled like sweat, cologne, and ambition. Influencer energy. Music thumped in the background, some remix of pop and ego. Young people in tight gear took selfies between half-hearted reps. Trainers shouted motivational cliches at bored-looking clients. And there he was, Ryder, taller than I expected, tanned within an inch of his life, wearing a sleeveless branded tank and a gold chain that probably meant more to him than his lease contract. He spotted me immediately, probably recognized my face from Selena's phone, or maybe she'd warned him I was coming. Either way, he didn't flinch. He smiled, wiped his hands on a towel, and walked over with the confidence of a man who's never been challenged. "You must be Graham," he said, extending a hand. I didn't take it. "I'd like a word," I said. His smile faltered, but to his credit, he nodded. "Sure. My office is this way." He led me past the main floor into a glass-walled corner room with an L-shaped desk, a protein shake blender, and a giant framed photo of him flexing in front of an SUV. I closed the door behind us. "What's this about?" he asked, folding his arms like he wanted to flex while being assertive. I pulled a folder from my briefcase and dropped it on his desk. He glanced down at the label: loan documentation, co-signed agreements, fraud indicators. "I'm assuming you recognize these," I said. He flipped it open, saw Selena's name, his, the bank info, the lease agreements, the spousal income statement. He didn't speak. "This," I said calmly, "is a complete breakdown of every loan, lease, and business arrangement you've entered into that ties back to me, whether you realized it or not." He looked up. "I didn't know she used your name. She said you were cool with it." "Interesting. Because you also signed a marital co-ownership statement tied to my financial disclosures. That's not something you guess about. That's something you verify." His voice sharpened. "Look, man, I didn't come here to screw you over," Selena said. "She said what?" I cut in. "That she was leaving her husband for a better life? That you were building something new together." He didn't answer. I leaned in slightly. "You're not building anything. You're borrowing. Your business is leveraged to the bone. Your equipment's leased. Your expansion loan was based on fraudulent collateral. And now that I've filed for asset protection, the banks are going to take a closer look." His confidence cracked. "They can't come after me," he said. "The loans are in her name." "No," I corrected. "They're in both your names. Which means when the bank discovers the spousal consent form was faked, they'll flag it. And when they dig further and realize your collateral is leased, they'll call in the full loan." He was sweating now, not from the gym. I stepped back and gave him space. "I'm not here to threaten you," I said. "I'm here to inform you. You built a house of cards, and you used my marriage as your foundation. That ends now." He closed the folder slowly, setting it aside like it might bite him. "What do you want?" "Nothing," I said. "I don't want your money. I don't want your gym. I just want you to understand something. I'm not the background character in your story. I'm the guy you should have checked before signing your name next to my wife's." He swallowed. "One more thing," I added. "When Selena moved out, she took some personal items that don't belong to her. A watch, some photos, my father's pen. I want them back." He nodded. "I'll ask her." "No, you'll make sure she returns them." He didn't respond, but his silence was agreement. I turned to leave, then stopped at the door. "Oh, and Ryder?" "Yeah. When the banks come knocking, don't be surprised. They move faster than your followers." And with that, I left. I didn't look back. Didn't need to. I delivered the message. Now it was up to him whether he wanted to fall quietly or make noise on the way down. The call came at 7:42 the next morning. I was eating breakfast in silence. 2 eggs, black coffee, the sound of a lawnmower humming somewhere down the street. My phone lit up with a call from Harper. I answered on the first ring. "It's done," she said. The emergency asset protection had been granted by the court. All joint assets, accounts, properties, investments were now frozen pending divorce proceedings. Nothing could be moved. Nothing could be touched. Selena was locked out. I thanked her and hung up. Then I checked my notifications. 17 login attempts on the joint banking portal in the past 24 hours. 3 flagged credit applications, each using our home as collateral. All denied. She was scrambling, not grieving, not reflecting, scrambling. A few hours later, the text started again. Selena. Graham, what are you doing? I can't access anything. The bank called. My accounts are frozen. Ryder's equipment is being repossessed tomorrow. I didn't respond. Selena. You're being cruel. Vindictive. This isn't you. She didn't recognize me anymore, and that was the point. Then came the call. I let it ring 3 times before answering. What have you done? She said. Her voice was shaking, half panic, half fury. I protected myself, I said simply. From you. You're ruining Ryder. You've destroyed everything he built. I didn't destroy anything. You did. I just stopped funding the illusion. There was a pause. A long one. Then her voice softened, almost calculated again. We don't have to do this like this, Graham. I know I hurt you. I made mistakes. Let's talk. Please. Just come home. We'll figure it out. There it was. The tone. The voice she used when she wanted something. 15 years of manipulation, dressed up as sweetness and understanding. I'm not coming back, I said. And there's nothing to figure out. We were partners, she whispered. No. I replied, steady. I was a provider. You were a user. That's not partnership. She tried again. We can fix this. You forged my name, Selena. Her silence was louder than any scream. You used our marriage to secure loans for another man. You took money behind my back. You threw away 15 years for a man with a motivational YouTube channel. And you thought I'd just walk away quietly. She didn't reply, so I gave her the last piece. The bank is already reviewing the loan documents. They'll see the forged signature. Once that happens, the entire loan is called in. Ryder's gym, his equipment, his lease. It's over. Then I hung up and blocked her number. I sat back in my chair, staring out the window. I wasn't shaking. I wasn't angry. I was calm. Because for the first time in a long time, I wasn't reacting. I wasn't trying to hold something together that was already dust in my hands. I was simply enforcing a boundary. She built a lie on top of a fantasy, propped up by someone else's hard-earned stability, and I knocked it down. 3 days later, a courier delivered a box to my rental. Inside were the items I'd asked Ryder about: my father's watch, 2 framed family photos, the fountain pen my grandfather used to sign the deed to our first home. No note. I took them out carefully, one by one, and placed them on the table. They didn't bring me closure, but they reminded me who I was before her, and who I'd be again. That same afternoon, Harper called with another update. The fraud division at the bank has completed their preliminary review, she said. They've determined that the loan Ryder and Selena filed is materially false. They've referred it to the district attorney. I let that sink in. Selena was no longer just at risk of divorce. She was at risk of criminal charges. Harper continued, we still have leverage. If she agrees to our settlement, we can offer a statement to the bank indicating you won't pursue personal claims. That could shield her from prosecution. But it's her move now. I nodded. Let's see if she blinks. I hung up and went for a walk. The sun was dipping low, casting long shadows across the sidewalk. Birds chirped in that almost artificial way that only exists in quiet neighborhoods. A kid was riding a bike, his training wheels clattering on the curb. I watched him fall once, then get back up, and I realized. That was me. I'd fallen. But I wasn't broken. I was just getting started. The mediation room was too quiet. Neutral-colored walls, a round table, a pitcher of untouched water in the center. Everything was designed to make people feel safe, civil, cooperative. But Selena didn't look safe. She looked tired. Not the curated kind of tired she posted about online, self-care needed, with a cup of tea and a blanket. This was real fatigue. Dark circles beneath her eyes. Perfect makeup cracking at the corners. Her blouse was designer, but wrinkled like she hadn't changed in a day. And when her eyes met mine across the table, there was no sparkle. Just tension. Desperation. Her attorney sat beside her, young, overconfident, already scanning the paperwork like he could outnegotiate time itself. Harper sat beside me. Calm. Organized. Deadly. We didn't speak at first. Selena's lawyer opened. My client is willing to be reasonable about the division of assets, despite the aggressive tactics employed so far. Aggressive. Interesting choice of words. Harper smiled politely. That's good to hear. Because there's been a development. She slid a document across the table. Thick. Stamped. Official. Selena's lawyer picked it up, eyes darting over the first few lines. Then his brow creased. The pause was just long enough to feel like a warning bell. What is this? He asked. Harper folded her hands. That's the bank's fraud investigation report. They determined Ms. Ryder forged my client's signature on multiple loan applications. She used their marital assets as collateral without his knowledge or legal consent. Selena's face drained of color. We'll need time to review this, her lawyer said, shifting uncomfortably. You can take all the time you want, Harper said. But you should be aware that the bank has already referred the matter to the district attorney. This meeting is a courtesy. One last opportunity to resolve things without formal criminal charges being filed. Selena turned to me, eyes wide. You wouldn't. I met her gaze without blinking. I didn't. The bank did. Her attorney leaned in, whispering something urgent. She shook her head slightly. Refused. Her pride flaring even now. Harper continued, smooth and firm. If Ms. Ryder is willing to sign our proposed settlement agreement today, Mr. Lorne is prepared to provide a neutral statement to the bank. He won't pursue theft charges related to the unauthorized wire transfer, nor will he press for restitution on the missing personal property. Silence. The air was heavy. Selena stared down at the document. Her hand trembled slightly as she picked it up. This settlement is generous, I added. You keep the yoga studio. You keep your car. You keep all personal belongings in your name. No alimony. But you assume full responsibility for all debts incurred in my name, including any and all liabilities tied to cross-core athletics. She looked up again. And Ryder? Not my problem, I said. But I'd imagine without access to my assets, the banks will seize whatever's left. Her lawyer leaned in again. This time, she didn't shake her head. She just nodded slowly. 10 minutes later, she signed. No theatrics. No closing argument. Just the scratch of pen on paper and the quiet end to a life we never really lived together. As she handed the folder back to Harper, she turned to me one last time. I never thought you'd fight back like this. I stood, collected my coat. That was your mistake. She blinked fast, looking for something to say. Something that would sting. Something to claw control back. But there was nothing left. I walked out without looking back. Outside, the sky was clear. The cold bit at my skin, but I welcomed it. It reminded me I was alive. Awake. Unburdened. A man doesn't win because he gets even. He wins when he no longer has to play the game. A month after the settlement, I moved into a small craftsman house near the edge of Montview. It wasn't luxurious. No gated driveway. No smart fridge or touch panel lighting. Just solid wood floors, honest walls, and a porch that creaked when the wind came in from the lake. It reminded me of myself. Old bones. Quiet dignity. Finally getting the chance to breathe again. I painted the walls with my own hands. Fixed a leaking faucet in the kitchen. Replaced 2 cabinet doors that were hanging loose. There was something grounding about rebuilding something physical, something real. After years of propping up someone else's illusion of life, it felt good to live in something that didn't pretend to be more than it was. I heard from mutual friends that Selena had moved to Colorado. New state. New identity. Her Instagram, once full of smoothies and retreat photos, now featured mountain views and inspirational quotes about forgiveness. No sign of Ryder. No sign of the gym. Just curated stillness. I didn't ask questions. Didn't need to. The last I heard, Cross-Core Athletics had been seized by the bank. Ryder tried to rebrand again, some new venture called Ryder Reborn. But once the equipment was gone and the lease terminated, there wasn't much left to flex in front of. Harper texted me once with a short update. Charges dropped after Selena agreed to full repayment under court supervision. DA agreed based on your statement. You're clear. I didn't respond with anything more than, thank you. Because I didn't want punishment. I wanted distance. Reese stopped by one Saturday with a 6-pack and a toolkit. We spent hours installing a new sink in the bathroom. Worked in silence mostly, the kind brothers fall into easily when words aren't necessary. At one point, he looked over and said, you could have taken her for everything. Every cent. She's lucky you're not as cold as she thought. I just shrugged. What would be the point? He nodded, handed me a wrench. Still, she's going to regret it. Maybe, I said. But I won't. That night, I sat on my back porch, glass of bourbon in one hand, quiet all around. No yoga playlist humming from the kitchen. No performative silence. Just silence. Real, breathing, earned peace. I thought about the man I used to be. Thoughtful. Soft-spoken. Always fixing problems before anyone realized there was one. Then I thought about the man I had to become. The one who calmly dismantled a lie, piece by piece, without ever raising his voice. Neither version of me was wrong. but only one of them was free. A few days later, I packed up my truck and took the old roads north toward my father's cabin in Vermont. No itinerary, no client meetings, just me, a few old fishing rods, and the sound of gravel under tires. I didn't leave a forwarding address, didn't post about it, didn't explain, because for the first time in 15 years, I had nothing to prove, and nothing left to lose. Just open sky, and a new chapter, written only in my name. What if I told you this story barely scratches the surface? I've released 10 anonymous revenge confessions from betrayed husbands. Some of them still haunt me. Raw, unfiltered. You'll want to see this. Link in the description below and comment section.